Welcome everybody and welcome to another team card competition. This is already number 8 and today's mission is create a neutral unit that has the unit type of a faction. Judged again by myself and only MKM. Other judges are Talaf Ha, Dirk and Bucks. And as always, Xeris is organizing it and also a judge himself. So let's continue. As you might have seen in the previous video, this is how I'm gonna judge cards on stream. So basically I will rate 1 to 5 and I will just go through all these topics and then just give some feedback on it. And then we just continue to the next and then I talk about the overall feeling of the card. Alright, so the first one is Acel the Piercer, a 6 mana legendary Raven hero from the neutral faction with an ability that goes on play, move the first empty tile in front, striking through units and destroying any with 6 or less strength, depending on how strong this card is in level. So basically it feels like some kind of Tsuri meets Raven. Instead of buffing your friendly units, this is more destroying like Soul Crushers does. It's an easy front gain. It has 0 speed. That's probably okay. If it flies on the first empty tile, it always has like 1 speed unless there is no empty tile in front of it. Otherwise you might just fly into your enemy baseline and then also deal direct base damage if it has a movement. Might be tricky in a brawl with modifiers, but that doesn't matter for now. So for innovative, I gave it 3 out of 5. It does something new with the Raven, and it's something like a Suri. Destroying is very much like Soul Crushers. Happy to see something like that as well. Well, I really like the black spell effect, just crushing something. Looks pretty dope for me. So that's the innovative. Fits in Stormbound, I give it a 2 out of 5. First of all, a Raven hero in neutral. I don't think legendaries needs to be in the neutral with a kingdom specific unit type. So I'm not really liking that one. Also moving through feels a bit more like what Dragon do like Suri. Like we got Toti elevated, but Ravens, not really. They don't really do those kind of things. Raven I just associate a bit more with the destroying ability. Also the drain is something what they do. They convert. But this feels a bit more Shadow Fanny. Or Swarm I mean. So that's why it's a 2 out of 3. Card complexity, give it a 3. It is talking about striking. If that's dealing damage. Or in tower in front. It's like a whole new mechanic and we don't see it more often. So that makes it a bit more complex. Might want to use when you design a single card. Just word it out instead of using a new like a word for some kind of mechanic like destroying, striking, those kind of things. That makes it a bit more difficult, but I think it makes sense overall. So that's why it's still just a 3 out of 5, right? That's positive. Enjoyable to play with. Yes, I'm not sure. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I do think this is gonna be an enjoyable card, but it's not gonna be super complex. You just have to hope your opponent doesn't really play around it. You can start baiting your opponent, obviously, dealing some small kind of damage towards units in a certain row to utilize the maximized value of the Acel the Piercer card. But it's pretty difficult, and I think it's pretty hard to set up good traps. Obviously, it is nice as a front gain, but it doesn't really do much in a Raven deck. So that's enjoyable, 3 out of 5. Enjoyable to play against. I rate it very high because your opponent can really play around it. This card has a lot of value, so you don't want to make it easy for your opponent, like play double bucks in one column, but that's just gonna be super silly. So your opponent can play around it, makes your opponent's life horrible, so that's always fun to do. That's why it's a 5 out of 5. The balance, 4 out of 5. Like the leveling steps, on level 1 for example, 4 strength, it can destroy anything with 4 or less. It has a movement, so 6 mana. Base stats is pretty weak, but let's say you can get an you can get always a kill, or for example, then you might already get like 6 strength, 2 movement, and that's like the lower side. Obviously, if you're going into late game, this card scales a bit more because more units will be on the board. I like those kind of things, and that also balances it out as well, because at the end, when people are getting a lot of mana, you just want to finish games. You don't want to continue and have an infinite loop going on. Leveling steps, logical, fun, consistent, very consistent, 1 strength, 1 ability, all the way to the top. I don't think it needs to be that much more. If you, for example, have an 8 kill and an 8 strength, 2 movement, that's already 16 value for 6 mana. That's pretty solid. Obviously, there are a lot of OP cards nowadays, but there will always be OP cards. This doesn't need to be one of them. So I think it's pretty fun, and I really enjoy circumpassing enemies' front. The name, Acel the Piercer. The Piercer, it pierces through over it. It's a raven, and yeah, I think it's just it's coincides with the ability. Overall feeling a 3 out of 5. That's mostly because it doesn't really feel like a raven, and yeah, that's what's weighing me a lot down. So that's why it's a 3. And the art, a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy the art. Maybe the outlines of the cards might be a bit more subtle. I like very big gray lines, as you can see right here. Might be fun. And well, good job, man. Hope you will make more card art. Thank you very much for making this card. Next one, Lone Zealots, 5 mana, an epic. And its ability is, when this dies with 2 or less other friendly units on board, spawn X strength ravens on all surrounding tiles. So that's a lot. It's like an Azure Hatchers. What I find interesting, I already see it as 1 movement. So it can easily trigger its ability if you want to. So let's go into the innovative. I gave it a 4. Interesting to have Raven spawn. First I thought like, what? Why does Raven spawn? But we have a lot of Ravens that already spawn stuff. So we got Dubious Hex, we got Avian Stalkers, we got Klaxi. Not really, but they are converting or destroying and converting. So there are a bunch of Ravens that already do this ability. But this does something else. Combines it with Undeath Effect, just like Avian Stalkers does. But it spawns all surrounding, a lot of weak dudes. Well, depending on which level, obviously. So we see a lot of spells. And this might be good as a board clear and then counter board clear. So pretty interesting. Does it fit in Stormbound? Well, basically I already said it, like there are enough units already. So let's give it a 4 out of 5. Card complexity. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think it's very obvious what's going on. You don't only have to have 2 or less other friendly units on the board. Might be a bit tricky with friendly units like strength, but I think that's pretty obvious. Otherwise you will see it once you play it. And then spawn on all surrounding tiles. Well, cannot be more clear, I guess. So 4 out of 5. Enjoyable to play with. I do think this is very enjoyable to play with, since you can easily set this up. Just don't have a lot of board presence. Go for big strong units. Place this. Do it with combination with Klaxi or something, or Kindred's Grace. And well, voila. You got a nice board full of mega strong units. And your opponent has trouble dealing with multiple clears in multiple turns. That goes into enjoyable to play against. Well, I often find it very frustrating to play against things that spawn a lot, since you are just starting to clear and then you have to clear it again, but you don't have a lot of clear cards. Like how many people are running Bladestorm and Beast of Terror, for example, in one deck. I don't think that's a lot. So I think it's very frustrating to play against. That's that, I guess. And mostly, if it doesn't have any movement, I would say like you can play around it a little bit better. But now your opponent can just set up everything pretty nicely. And that's super problematic, I think. So that's why rated pretty low. balance at the current meta, this card is just insanely strong. And like it's super easy to set up, and basically on max level, let's look, you just spend 5 mana for 5 strength, and then a turn afterward you get like 30 strength for max value. Well, that's just insane. I don't think that's very healthy, so I rate that one as well pretty low. Leveling steps, well, I do think it's pretty fun that your tokens go stronger. For example, if you go with toads, you all have 1 strength. You don't want to feed the obsidian butchers even more. And with the ravens, strength going up, synergizes with Klaxi, synergizes with avian stalkers. So that's pretty sweet. I don't really like that its ability or its base strength also goes up. I think that might be a bit strange. You can always fit in, spawn X amount of units, but that's not really Raven-like. Like avian stalkers just spawn everywhere where possible. And the same goes on for Klaxi. They just convert everything with a certain strength. They don't really care about numbers. But it's difficult. Name lone zealots. Pretty sweet. Like the zealots, and looking at the art they used makes pretty much sense. Overall feeling, a 3 out of 5. And that's mostly because I don't really like the balance. And it's super difficult to play against it. So if that was better, I would definitely rate it higher. Alright, next one. Dead Set Tabbies, a feline, 5 strength, and it goes with if the friendly base has less than X strength or X HP, base health, how do you want to call it, this gains 1 movement. Let's go. First of all, I want to say the mission was to create a unit type from a kingdom for a neutral card. Felines isn't neutral, or Felines is neutral and not a kingdom related, so that's something they missed in the mission. But hey, let's just rate the card as it is. So innovative, let's go 4 out of 5. Well, it makes sense that I rated high, I guess, because it does something new, and I like the fact that it looks at your base HP. I don't really like the numbers they put in, but that they played with around it, and also makes it lethal, like high win, high reward, high win chance, because you just need to receive damage to deal the final blow, and I find that mechanic pretty interesting. Also a nice way to close down games. So it fits in Stormbound. I gave it a 3. I'm not completely sure. We don't see a lot of these things as of yet. So I'm a bit curious. But if it does fit somewhere, it definitely fits with the feline. Because they have like the whole wildcats tribe within the felines. They do a lot of funky stuff. So why not? Card complexity. I gave it a 5 out of 5. It's pretty obvious what it does. It gains movement. So not much to gain there. Maybe when I look at this now, I might notice that they chose the word or 10 HP. Maybe just go for base health. I think that's what they use in Stormbound. But it's a small minor thingy. Enjoyable to play with. Well, definitely, because you will taking a lot of risk. Try to get some base damage going on. Maybe combine it with even with Swarm, most likely, with Restless Goats, and also the spell that destroys a unit and it deals 3 base damage. Things like that can enable this card to be lethal. Enjoyable to play against. I also think it's nice because you know if your opponent plays this card, you need to be careful. You can play around it by denying a lot of front, or just going for 1 big unit and then deal lethal in 1 turn instead of chipping your opponent down. The balance, 3. I'm not sure about the balance. Doesn't seem that strong if you do not have it enabled. And if you do have it enabled, it isn't a lot more value. So that's why I gave it just a 3 out of 5. leveling steps, I also gave it 3. I think, well, I personally love this card if it has triggers with lower base HP, but then maybe has more strength. So it will almost be something you can use. Because nobody's gonna use this card as a vanilla 5 strength with 8 movement. But it's also really tricky if you give it more, then it just becomes another heroic soldier's power creep. So that's something silly. Maybe this gains 2 movement, so it becomes a 3 mover, so you can move a lot. That might be good as well as a additional leveling step. If you do more gain strength in the middle, it just becomes really awkward, I guess. So maybe that's not the biggest idea. Might have also turned it around, like give it strength, but already have like 3 movement. I don't know. It's a lot of ways to look at this card. I just gave it a 3 question mark. The name, I really like Dead Set. Tabbies sounds kitty-like, and Dead Set is like all or nothing. So 5 out of 5. Overall feeling, I do have a 2. And that's just, if you look at the stats, it feels awkward to give it a 2. But they also did not create the card following the rules. And I just not really enjoying like 15 HP or less on maxed out level. That's already triggered so easily. I just discarded so much more potential, it feels like, and then well, if I look at this card, I really want to play it, but if I would have this card in my collection, I wouldn't play it or something. I don't know. It's a bit weird. So my feeling is a bit meh, but the numbers I gave say the opposite. But amazing card. Well done, guys. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and don't forget to follow, like, and share, comment on this video. And also we're going to do more card competition, and we moved it to my Discord server. So if you want to join there as well, and maybe join with a group or whatever, let's join up and see what's possible. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time. Cheers.